HarperCollins presents The Forbidden Promise by Lorna Cook, read by Beaton. Chapter 1. Invermoray House, Scotland, end of August 1940. Sometimes it's not the biggest lies, but the little white ones that bring about the most change. Although Constance couldn't possibly have known that by pretending she had a migraine in order to escape the house, there would be such lasting consequences. Constance sat on the edge of the large rock that jutted out over the loch and hitched her evening dress up in what her mother would call an unladylike fashion. She removed her satin shoes and peeled off her stockings, dipping her legs into the cool water, soothing her dance-sore feet. She needn't be discreet. The edge of the loch was so far from the house that no one could possibly hear her, and given the strict blackout regime the housekeeper adhered to, no one could see her either. Constance closed her eyes, and then opened them almost immediately. Her migraine had been a fabrication, although the racket the band was making was exceedingly loud, and growing louder the more enthusiastic both the players and the guests became. If she strained her ears now, she could hear them playing all the way from the loch. The need to escape her birthday party, to escape Henry, had engulfed her to the point she could think of no other way out but to lie. Over the past few months she had found herself liking Henry. She had only known her brother Douglas's friend a short while, spending time with him when the two men journeyed to Invermoray on rare days of leave. He was older than her by only a few years, and she had looked up to Henry, idolised him, and found herself following her parents' lead when they suggested he might be a good match. Henry had clearly liked her, or so she believed. Constance thought he would be different, not like the other suggestive and sometimes inappropriate men she'd met, of which there had not been that many, admittedly. But he had shocked her as they danced, as she nestled into him, enjoying the closeness. His hands had crept down her back until they were resting far too low, his fingertips grazing her bottom. She had become stiff, alert, and then he had clutched her. It had taken all her courage to gently move his hands when she realised his behaviour was anything but romantic. "Henry?" she had questioned when he had pulled her closer again. He had smiled as if he'd done nothing wrong, and she doubted herself. Was she being too prudish? The silver-grey silk ball gown clung to her skin as she danced, and she had caught Henry staring at her chest on more than one occasion. He had clearly found it a challenge to listen to her conversation, to drag his eyes up to meet hers. She had begun rambling in order to cover her embarrassment, her growing sense of disappointment. When she had excused herself to powder her nose, uncertain as to what was happening and if she should allow it, he had cornered her, pulling her into the darkened orangery, which was unlit in case enemy aircraft should spot a light through the glass panes. Constance knew men had needs, and she wasn't unworldly. She knew what those needs were, and what part she'd be expected to play. While she'd been told that a girl should save herself for her husband, there were many girls at her Swiss school who had bragged joyously that they'd been up to far more than they should with the opposite sex. But, as much as she thought she might eventually want it with Henry, she wasn't quite sure. Not yet. She didn't want him to go off her, but whatever was happening between them needed to permeate, just a little longer, just until she was sure. "You look beautiful tonight," he had said, his eyes raking her body. And then he had kissed her, his lips crashing against hers, his hands holding her shoulders. She had tried to put her arms around his waist, her eyes wide open, uncertain if she was responding correctly, unfamiliar with how far she should let this go. His eyes were closed, and he was slowly ushering her further into the desert.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?